Hi, I'm Tristan. I'm 13 years old. I'm curious, I'm passionate, and I'm sure you are too. Join me on a quest to dig deep and find out new things. Welcome to Youth Voices. Good evening. Welcome to my first program. This is your radio host, Tristan Pang, on Planet FM 104.6, Youth Voices. Good to have you company. So in my program, I'll share with you some things that are inspirational, including interviews, stories, and quotes, and whatever I find interesting and inspiring. Let's talk. My featured guest today is someone who really blew my mind. Jade Leung is currently 21 years old and has recently completed a Bachelor of Engineering at the University of Auckland. During her final year at high school, she received an outstanding scholarship in chemistry, geography, painting, physics, science, and also scholarships in biology, English, Spanish, statistics, and modeling, and a top subject award in chemistry. Her achievements have placed her among the top 10 scholars in the country. Jade is heavily involved in non-governmental organisation and social enterprise sectors throughout New Zealand. She is former CEO of P3 Foundation, an organisation in New Zealand to end poverty, and is also a manager at Engineers Without Borders New Zealand. Jade has also been involved in growing NCEA Campus, a not-for-profit organisation tackling educational inequality in New Zealand. Under her leadership, the charity grew to a team of 180 tutors, serving 3,000 students throughout 2 years. I'm very pleased to have Jade as my guest today. So hi Jade, welcome to my program.
Thanks, Tristan.
So when I first saw you, you really blew my mind. That was at the TEDx Youth First rehearsal 2 years ago. All of us had to read or at least peek at our speeches, but you didn't hold any cue cards, and you just ad-libbed fluently for over 10 minutes on the stage. With your very impressive presentation skills and all the academic achievements you have, you obviously have a very good memory. I even suspect that you have some sort of superpower. So can you tell us about the secret behind the superpower and how we can boost our memories?
Sure, yeah, no, really good question. I think it actually came from a disability that I have, you could call it. So I'm actually an albino, which means that I have, among many other things, a bit of an eyesight problem, which can't be rectified by glasses. So from an early age, I've always had to memorize most things that I've seen. So when I did speeches at school, or when I did debating, or when I even just learned stuff in class, I have to memorize things quite quickly. So that's kind of where that comes from, is basically because I can't read any notes that I write anyway. In terms of ways that I've gotten better at memorizing things and generally sort of gotten through school with the results that I've got, I think a big thing for me is always sort of larger conceptual understanding. So, for example, with a speech, I always have a kind of broad narrative in my head. And with a concept or with a test or an exam, I always kind of ground pieces of content in the wider context of that sort of broad subject area. And that, for me, I think kind of defines what good memory potentially is being quite versatile about the way that you can draw just different pieces of knowledge together, and the way that you can kind of draw on this wider context to be able to answer questions in exams and that sort of thing. So I think in terms of sort of tips for people in the future, I think definitely kind of focusing on big picture things helps quite a bit in terms of doing well academically, in terms of being able to deliver a presentation kind of naturally and organically as well as compellingly. Yeah, that's definitely sort of how I've gone through most things, is making sure I have that bigger picture always at the back of my head.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I read about your story from the newspaper. It was the time when your final high school results were released. You proved your parents wrong. You were quite quietly hoping to gain a Premier Award, but your parents feared that you've bitten off much more than you could have chewed. So when the results came out, you nervously locked yourself away to see if your parents were right. But obviously your parents were wrong. You got through all 12 of your exams, and it seemed that you're self-motivated and your parents didn't give you any pressure on your studying. So what motivates you to work hard and achieve a high? And were you always the top at school since you were young? Could you tell us more about yourself when you were at primary and high school?
Yeah, a really interesting point, actually. Like, you're completely right about my parents never really having put much pressure on me or any of my siblings. And I've always kind of really appreciated that, I think. And so from an early age, I wouldn't say that I've always been super sort of intent on doing well academically. I mean, even in primary and high school, doing well academically was certainly important to me for a bunch of different reasons, but I was always very involved in things outside of that as well. And so I think, to answer your kind of last question first, in terms of whether I was always on top when I was in primary and high school, I wouldn't say I was. Like, I was sort of relatively bright in primary school, but there were definitely people who were more intent on doing well than I was. In terms of why that kind of changed quite a bit in the last few years of high school, so I guess we were doing exams that actually mattered. For me, like, I've always really enjoyed learning as an activity. So even beyond the classroom, I was always quite curious about a lot of things around me. I remember I always used to carry like a little piece of paper around with me. I'd always write down questions that I was curious about. So from an early age, I was always like quite sort of intent on growing myself academically, whether that was in class or not. And I really enjoyed the high school environment that I had. So the high school environment I had and the teachers I had really encouraged me to kind of push the boundaries of learning and be able to challenge myself and carry myself at my pace. And so that kind of environment really tipped me over, I think. So I found that I could accelerate myself as quickly as I could, and I found that I could stretch myself in different directions. And that kind of ultimate like thirst for learning, I think, was really sort of at the forefront of what drove me when I was in the latter years of high school. So it wasn't really the intention to do well grades-wise. It was more just my kind of really raw enjoyment for learning, which kind of got me to do well in the exams. And that kind of stays with me now. So that's why I do the university degree that I do, and that's kind of why I do the work I do outside of university as well, is that kind of learning that I think everyone's kind of really got in them. It's just a matter of kind of having an environment that facilitates that. And you obviously, Tristan, kind of know really well what I'm talking about. So yeah, that's really it in terms of how that changed in high school.
Wow, that's awesome. So talking about voluntary work, I saw your bio, including a long list of voluntary stuff, including P3 Foundation, Engineering Without Borders New Zealand, and NCA Campus. So can you tell us about these and why you started to help the community? And can you also tell us about our young listeners and how they can start getting involved?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's a lot to get involved in, and there's a lot of ways to get involved in from quite an early age as well. In terms of where my journey started, it was sort of in the later years of high school. So, frankly, I can't actually remember what really sort of got me involved in the first place, but I did remember that the last 2 years of high school I was leading a variety of groups at school and running a few campaigns and fundraisers, and that's really kind of where it grew. I think one of the biggest things that kind of keeps me going is the different people that you engage with, and so the people that inspired me at high school and the people that inspire me in university kind of keep me involved in the NGO sector and in the social enterprise sector quite a bit. In terms of the organisations that you mentioned, I'll talk briefly through P3 Foundation and Engineers Without Borders, because these two are organisations that I think are quite easy to get involved with if you're a young person in New Zealand. With P3 Foundation, it's New Zealand's largest youth-led movement against extreme poverty in the Asia Pacific. So what we do is we work primarily with high school and university-age students, and we engage them with the issue of extreme poverty in a variety of different ways. So it's through education programs in high school, it's through campaigns at university, it's through fundraising, and within that, it's quite a vibrant community, and it's quite heavily kind of culture-based as well. And so with PT Foundation, all of us are volunteers. There's 130 of us spread across the country. And I think that's something that, as a young listener, you can get involved in quite easily. Just head onto our website, heaps of opportunities to get involved. And it's something you can do from quite an early age as well. With Engineers Without Borders, that's obviously specifically kind of humanitarian engineering. And so with that organisation, we work with communities in the South Pacific as well as in New Zealand, looking at delivering technical assistance to address their needs. And so within that, I think the thing that was really attractive to me about that is that it's specifically kind of a technical specialty, and it was specifically related to my degree because I did engineering. And so I think for young engineers or young aspiring engineers, it's also quite easy to get involved in that. I think broader than that, if we're talking about wanting to get involved in the community, I think New Zealand is absolutely beautiful in that respect. Like I came here from Hong Kong in 2008, and I was just blowed my mind how involved a lot of people were in the community, and also how many different ways people could contribute. And so I think young people don't have to look very far for something that kind of catches their attention, something that could use their skills, something that could use their time. And so in terms of getting involved, I would definitely encourage everyone to just have a go at just a quick Google or a quick chat to your teachers or a quick chat to people around you, and you'll find opportunities pop up. And you'll find more than enough opportunities pop up, so you have to be able to sort of choose between them almost, because I think New Zealand's very, very good in that respect. And in terms of being able to choose what you get involved in, I think it's important to identify what you're interested in contributing to from an early age. So for me, it was youth engagement was a big thing for me, and so that's kind of what led me to where I am now. So yeah, that's kind of broadly a description of kind of the work that I do, and I think anyone wanting to get involved in it, it's a super easy journey to get started on.
Stay tuned for the next part of the interview next week. Let's quote, "The beginning of wisdom is found in doubting. By doubting, we are led to questioning. And by questioning, we arrive at the truth." By Peter Abelard. So it's good to be nosy. Keep doubting and asking. Let's be inspired. The story of a woodcutter from academictips.org. Once upon a time, a very strong woodcutter asked for a job in a timber merchant, and he got it. The pay was really good, and so was the work condition. For those reasons, the woodcutter was determined to do his best. His boss gave him an axe and showed him the area where he is supposed to work. The first day, the woodcutter brought 18 trees. "Congratulations," the boss said. "Go on the way." Very motivated by the boss's word, the woodcutter tried harder the next day, but he could only bring 15 trees. The third day, he tried even harder, but he could only bring 10 trees. Day after day, he was bringing less and less trees. "I must be losing my strength," the woodcutter thought. He went to the boss and apologized, saying that he could not understand what was going on. "When was the last time you sharpened your axe?" the boss asked. "Sharpen? I had no time to sharpen my axe. I'd been very busy trying to cut trees." Our lives are like that. We sometimes get so busy that we don't take time to sharpen the axe. In today's world, it seems that everyone is busier than ever. So why is this? Could it be that we've forgotten how to stay sharp? There's nothing wrong with activity and hard work, but we should not get so busy that we neglect the truly important things in life, like our personal life, giving more time to our families, taking time to read, and so on and so forth. We all need time to relax, to think and meditate, and to learn and grow. If we don't take the time to sharpen the axe, we'll become dull and lose our effectiveness. We learned a lot from Jade. One of them are that things that seem to put us down actually can help. Disabilities or disadvantages can transform into strengths. She'll inspire us more, so don't miss next week's program. We'll be back with more inspirational pieces, such as quotes and stories. Later this month, we'll also be interviewing a few other inspirational guests, including Matt Canham and Andrew Patterson. So for today, that's it from me, Tristan Pang. Thank you for listening. Please write to me on Facebook. I need your support. Don't forget to like Youth Voices on Facebook. Remember to tune in next week at 5:20 p.m. on 104.6 FM. Or you can listen anytime online on planetaudio.org.nz/youthvoices. Join me again next Saturday at 5:20 p.m. to dig deeper. or listen anytime online at planetaudio.org.nz/Youth Voices. Youth Voices.
Your language, your interests, your community on Planet Audio.